And it starts with a state that wants to be a leader versus just allowing the tech companies to go directly to these towns and do whatever the heck they're going to do.
Hi, I'm Jayson Manship, host of Authentic and Agentic, presented by TechPoint. Every week on this show, we break down what's happening in AI and what it means for how we work, lead, and live. Join me for a human-focused conversation that keeps you ahead of the curve. This is the Authentic and Agentic podcast on the IBJ Media Podcast Network. Hi, folks. Welcome to the Authentic and Agentic podcast. I am your host, Jayson Manship. And before we jump into today's conversation, I always want to do a little deep dive into what's happening in the world of AI and technology. And my first story this week I call When AI Goes Down. So I guess first up, a reminder that the AI world is still very early. This is all moving very quick, and it's all kind of being built in the air, airplane in the air. But last week, Anthropic's Claude AI experienced a pretty widespread outage. It knocked out the chatbot, the API, and a lot of the tools developers rely on. Thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of users suddenly just couldn't access the service at all. And the initial reaction online was kind of hilarious. I saw developers posting things like, I guess I'll just write code like a caveman today, which is kind of funny, but also kind of revealing, because what this outage showed is just how dependent people are already becoming on these AI tools for daily work. When the system goes down, people don't just lose the convenience, they lose a major part of their workflow. It's like having a coworker out sick that you rely on. And I think this is something we're going to see more of. So as AI moves from novelty to infrastructure, outages stop becoming annoying and they start becoming real productivity events. Think about it like this. If Google Docs goes down, those of you that use it, or Microsoft Office Connect or whatever it's called, you kind of get stuck, right? Your work stops. If AWS goes down, the whole internet breaks. All sorts of services shut off. And I think we're getting to a world where if AI goes down, decision-making slows down for everybody. So outages like this are a reminder that we're building a new layer of infrastructure, and infrastructure always has growing pains. My second story this week, kind of on that vein, I guess, in terms of growth and infrastructure, podcasts are exploding. Right now, I'm seeing growth in ways I haven't seen before. Podcasts are evolving and they're changing. And here's what I'm witnessing. So for years, podcasts were audio first. Most of you listening to this podcast are listening via audio. That's just a stat and a fact. But it's trending further and further towards the video lens. Now, I think it's probably because of how handsome I am. People just want to see it. But some people also tell me I have a face for radio. So I don't really know how to take that. But right now, the industry is shifting, and it's shifting hard towards video podcasts. And what I'm witnessing is these big platforms are jumping in. So Apple Podcasts recently announced a major update that's going to support full live video podcasts directly inside of the Apple Podcast app. Listeners are going to be able to seamlessly switch between watching and listening. They'll be able to download video episodes. And importantly, creators are going to have new monetization tools. At the same time, Netflix is starting to experiment with hosting video podcasts on its platform. So they struck a deal with some podcast networks and some creators to bring their shows, their podcast shows, into the streaming world. We're seeing, I think, 30 or so creators right now on Netflix, but you can literally open your Netflix app on your TV, go to podcasts, and start watching podcasts. Think about what this means. I think the line between podcasts and YouTube shows and television is basically disappearing. Podcasts are becoming the new version of talk shows, interviews, commentary programming. And what's fascinating is that most of this growth is coming from independent creators. It's not top down from NBC Universal. It's coming from small publishers or small creators or small media companies. And I think this is exactly why shows like Authentic and Agentic exist, because the barrier to having a deep conversation about AI has never been lower. I built a studio in my office. We record every week and we push it out to the world, and people are listening. I think it's a really, really cool thing. And so if you personally have something to say and you want to start a podcast or you want to launch something like this, I'd be happy to talk to you. I know Chris Spangle at the IBJ would be happy to talk to you. And frankly, if you have something that's interesting to the larger Indianapolis market, I bet the IBJ would like to talk to you, because they are looking to grow this podcast network and to help tell more stories like this. My third story today is not really a story. This is really about an experiment that I want to run. Last episode I recorded was about how I'm using AI agents to run my life. And a lot of people are asking me about it. And so I thought, why don't I do something? Why don't I launch something to try to help here? So here's what I've come up with. Over the last year or so, I've been experimenting with these things and I'm learning how to build AI agents, not just chatbots, but agents that actually run part of my business. Monitoring information, taking action, scheduling meetings, following up, automating workflows, hooking two disparate systems together. And so what I've decided to do is launch a small experimental cohort to try to work with others to build systems together. So here's what I'm looking for. 8 people, 6 months. I want to do a once a month meeting in my office here in Noblesville. I'm happy to Zoom it out also if people can't make it in person. But my goal is simple. Over the course of 6 months, I want every participant to have built a set of AI agents that are actively running parts of their life. And I want to be hands-on and show people how to do this. Everyone has their own needs. Everybody has their own things that they want to do with something like this. But imagine building your own digital chief of staff. I think that sounds fun. I'm doing it personally. I want to show other people how to do it. And I want to kind of uncork and unpack some of the nuances to this as a learning experiment. So if that sounds interesting to you, please go to jaysonmanship.com/cohort. It's JAYSON manship.com/cohort and apply. I'm looking for 8 folks. I do have a nominal fee attached to it, really, frankly, just to make sure that you're serious about it. Because the last thing I want is people that sign up and don't attend and don't participate. So if you're interested, please do that. Reach out to me from there directly. I'm happy to talk about it. This is not a high pressure thing. But my goal is to find 8 folks that would love to have a digital chief of staff to help run their lives. And I'd like to work through building that together. So that's the news for this week. Let's jump back into the conversation. Or let's get into our conversation, I should say, with Megan Glover and Isaac Pellerin from 120Water. Before we do that, let's kick it to our sponsor, TechPoint, who makes this show happen. AI isn't just changing jobs, it's changing who gets hired. TechPoint's new brief, AI amplifies the need to address the experience gap, shows how AI is changing entry-level jobs, and how employers can take advantage of this moment. Download the brief and find out ways to get involved at techpoint.org/AI gap. Hey friends, welcome back to Authentic and Agentic. This is the podcast where we talk about AI, technology, and the humans trying to build the future without accidentally breaking civilization along the way. Today's episode is about water, which I'm really excited about. But before we get there, I want to share a little backstory here. So I have this woman on my team, Bailey, who is pushes me. She wants to make sure that I create something great. She's our creative director here at Gen Moon X, and she's always telling me, like, do this better, do that better, change this, change that. And I want that feedback, right? And so one of the things she said is I don't use my hands enough. And 2, there's no humor. I'm not really like making any fun. I'm not having any fun along the way, it feels like, because the topics are always very serious and very AI focused. And so she encouraged me to use my hands. So I'm probably going to be a little handsy in this episode. Apologies. And then 2, to make some jokes along the way. So as you might imagine, I try to take that to heart. I spent an irresponsible amount of time trying to come up with water jokes. Most of them don't hold water. Some of them leaked, some of them trickled. None of them are great. But I'm going to do my best to inject some water humor at the beginning of this and maybe even throughout the conversation with Megan and Isaac. So I thought I had this really strong opener written. I was really trying to come up with something funny. It's just watered down. It wasn't very good. So my kids saw my notes for today's episode and they asked what the topic was. I said water infrastructure. Ruby, my 12-year-old, goes, oh boy, that conversation's going to be deep. I said, well, the insights are probably going to be deep, but the jokes are probably going to be a little bit shallow, just a bunch of dad jokes. I learned something when I was putting the show together, that the people who work in water, they tend to have incredibly clear thinking, like crystal clear thinking. Their ideas, they just flow. These people just know how to think about this stuff. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm just treading water, just trying to keep up. And today's conversation, man, they really opened my eyes to see this wave of insight that I hadn't considered before. So anyway, I think that's it for my water jokes. If these didn't land, maybe we can just like hit the delete button and the whole thing can evaporate and we can just move on with our lives. But I do think you have something really interesting that you should hear, and that is what Megan and Isaac are going to share with us today. These guests are doing work that matters a lot more than my ability to stretch a water metaphor past the point of dignity. Today, Megan Glover, the co-founder and CEO of 120Water, she founded this company, and they are working to help communities across the country monitor water quality, manage compliance, and ensure that the water flowing into our homes is actually safe to drink. And with her, Isaac Pellerin works with her at 120Water. He's right at the heart of technology, infrastructure, and the systems that power modern communities. And Isaac is a very good storyteller. So I think you're really going to love this conversation about water. We get into how water is fundamental as an infrastructure. It intersects with technology, data, and the future of AI. And because on this show, we spend a lot of time talking about the digital world, sometimes I think we forget about the physical systems underneath it. Today, we're going to talk about water, but energy, infrastructure, these are all the things that make the world around us, especially this world of AI, possible. So we're going to dig into how water systems are evolving, how technology is changing, how communities manage these water systems, and why this topic is becoming more and more important than most people realize. So let's dive right into the deep end on this week's show. Megan, Isaac, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you guys.
Great to be here.
It's going to be fun. I know very little about the water space, but I also have been told that I need to inject more humor in my jokes. And so I'm hopeful that we can get some dad jokes built into some of this stuff, because water feels like there's a lot of opportunity there.
Absolutely.
We'll
have you drinking from a fire hose by the end.
Perfect. So let me start with kind of the origin story.
Okay.
Megan, I'm going to direct this to you because I know this is your baby. Most people don't wake up one morning and say, I really want to go start a water infrastructure company. Mm-hmm. That doesn't tend to resonate with most folks. So what problem did you see? What made you think of this? What made you want to chase this?
Mm-hmm. That's a fair question.
Sure.
Absolutely fair question. So 10 years ago, I can't believe it's been 10 years ago, but I had a wonderful career as a go-to-market executive, building out business-to-business software companies across a number of different industries here in our Indiana ecosystem. And then the Flint, Michigan water crisis happened.
Yeah.
And I was having coffee, on Mass Ave with a mentor and what would be my business partner, Chris Baggett, who founded a company called Exact Target. Yeah, and I met him at Compendium.
We've heard of it.
That's where Isaac and I connected.
At Compendium?
At Compendium. Okay. Yeah. And, we got on the topic of Flint and water, and he said, have you thought about testing your water, Megan? And I'm like, wow. I didn't know I was supposed to test my water, but now I can't turn on a television without seeing some child, getting pulled into a gymnasium, having their blood tested for lead poisoning. And my kids were very young at the time, I think 2 and 5. And by God, I wanted to test my water. And so that night I went and I did my research, and I couldn't find a place where I felt comfortable putting my credit card in to have my water tested. And so I went back to Chris and I said, I know nothing about this. So we ended up pulling in a lab guy who became a good friend and business partner as well, Dave Cole. But we launched 120Water within 6 weeks as a business to consumer lab to doorstep to communicating results in a very consumer friendly way. Because that was a gap that we saw in the market, is you could go to a lab and spend $1,500 on a water testing panel. But do you remember those chemistry notes?
No, I don't know what any of that means. It's not helpful.
I just know, can I make Easy Mac? Can I fill bottles with this? And so on and so forth. And so we launched the company purely as a passion, and we felt that this was a service that needed to exist in this day and age. And then we might get into the pivot in a bit, but as a go-to-market executive, you learn to listen to market signals.
Yeah,
it's what you learn. It's in your DNA.
Yeah.
And as we were launching the company, my Google alerts every single day was so-and-so community finds lead, now has to test more. So-and-so school wanting to get proactive needs to test more at the tap. And I went back to these business partners and I said, we've only got about $5,000 in the bank, but I think we really should pivot this where it seems like the market is going around the tap and testing more at the tap. And sure enough, that ended up being where the company was and is still today. 10 years from now is a digital water company in the municipal water market.
A digital water company. I don't think I've ever heard that term before.
Right?
That's dead on. That's really an interesting origin story for sure.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, you made the chemistry joke. H2O, that's what I know. That's I don't know anything about lead or fluoride or any of these other things that happen. Mm-hmm. And I always wonder, even when I go buy bottled water and it says it has all this stuff, I'm like, isn't it all this water?
It's marketing. Marketing at its finest.
Perfect. So water infrastructure is one of the most critical systems in our country, and most of us never think about it. I don't. Like I said, it's water, right? So what does the average person misunderstand? I'd like to start with you, but Isaac, I'd like to hear your perspective on this too. What does the average person misunderstand about how fragile the system is, how complex the system is? Like, you getting into this world, you started peeling back layers of the onion and seeing the sausage factory, so to speak, the water factory.
Yeah.
What do we need to know?
Yeah. And I also say once you learn the stuff, you can't unlearn it.
Yeah.
And you almost become more passionate about it, which makes me super fun at the cocktail party, bringing everybody down and say, did you know that the age of our infrastructure has exceeded its useful life and is rated a D, globally? But that truly is the case. We've just not, we invest in the things that we see.
Yeah.
We invest in the parks.
That's real.
We invest in the fire trucks. We invest in the people, right, to run our communities, but we rarely invest in the things that we cannot see. And the reality is what is fueling our drinking water has exceeded its useful life. There is lead in our drinking water communities where there shouldn't be. There are wood pipes in our communities where they shouldn't be. And so you compound the age of our infrastructure with what's happening on a climate. And one, the infrastructure is not built to withstand these 100-year events, which are now occurring on a more frequent basis. Isaac, you can hold me accountable with my numbers, but it's something like, I think we got a D- in our last infrastructure report.
That's not great.
As a water and wastewater.
You don't have to know much about systems to know a D- is not where you want to be.
Yeah, and our rate base isn't to a place where we can start investing at the clip that we need to actually completely repair or replace the infrastructure. So it's a very fascinating topic, and I wish we had more exposure on how much and the need and the value of really investing.
Well, I want to talk about the need too, and Isaac, I do want to hear some perspective here, but population's grown a little bit over hundreds of years, right? And urban density and sprawl and all the factors that come with that, right? And then we're going to tail end of this conversation, talk more about the AI needs, right? Because data centers require water, et cetera. And so any other thoughts on like the complexity of the system and what we...
Yeah, I think what we don't appreciate is that so many of our communities, the water systems are most communities in the country, 90% of them serve populations of 10,000 or less. And those utilities operate with 3 or fewer employees. And that might be the person who's in charge of mowing the grass at the cemetery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're doing the other things, plowing
these aren't
the roads.
Water engineers.
These aren't necessarily water engineers. And so they have infrastructure. They have to have the license to operate and too much work to do. And so keeping up with it all is really difficult. And so when you think about the need for people as part of infrastructure, we have a people problem in the water industry. And I think that goes underappreciated. And then we have a major funding problem, kind of to the point of we invest in the things that we see. We don't know how to value water. And we need it. It's a necessary.
We need it, but
how do you put a value?
So many
on
folks just say it's a necessary human right,
Sure.
right? But there's a lot of cost that goes into making sure that your water is your choice to drink versus buying a competitor a bottled water. So there's a lot in the value of water.
And the misstep, like if you rewind back to like when we laid pipes in this country, that has a cost of putting the pipe down, and then we based water rates off of the cost that it takes to push water through the pipe, not necessarily contemplating in the equation that we might need to replace it later. So then that's the compounding problem that
it is really fascinating.
You can't raise rates. Communities will your
rate base isn't going to fix the problem. Yep.
You're going to get a lot of heated phone calls.
I bet.
And like Parks and Rec style angry town hall meetings.
Just get Ron Swanson in there.
Yeah. So so those are kind of all the pressures kind of come together all at the same time.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit. So, I mean, if you're in Central Indiana, you've heard about the water stuff going on, specifically in Lebanon, I think is a good.
Yeah, that's close to home. Absolutely.
Right? It's real close. I don't understand most of that. I hear people talking about piping in water from other places. I hear, reservoir systems. I hear land rights, who owns the rights. I mean, if they're taking water from another municipality and bringing it in, like how, I don't know. Can you just like give us a 60-second overview of how this whole thing works?
Yeah, and I'd like to give my point of view and opinion, and it's merely that. right? But I think too often we don't see water as the economic development driver that it is. And having them at the table when these decisions are being made would circumvent a lot of downstream. That's a water pun.
Hey, we did it. First one. We need to add a little dinger
Ding, ding,
timer.
ding.
Yeah.
Take a drink of water every time you hear a water pun. But literally, I advocate a lot on our podcast and social media that once we start to maybe see water as the economic driver it is, maybe we can bring the hydrologist into the conversation sooner and say, what is the earth telling us about the sample of supply of water that we're thinking about putting these water-intensive manufacturing sites in?
Yeah, which is all the talk in the AI conversation.
Right? So once we think about placemaking and having water at the forefront of that conversation, I don't mean to oversimplify some of the problem solution, because I know that there's a lot more of complexity that goes into that. And but I do think how do we end up in those situations? It's a lot of stakeholder management and not having the right sustainability type folks around the table saying, do we actually have the right resources to be able to fund this level of economic development?
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and there's an aspect where often the water utility folks are the last to be brought into the conversation, because the mayor, the mayors, like everyone else is not thinking that. They're like, oh, you just need to increase capacity.
Sure,
and that
magically
that does no service, and so there's a lot of movement in the water utility space to say, hey, how do you start getting ahead of this, making sure you're at the table in the planning phase, because it has implications that you need to
saw that play out at a statewide level.
We did.
Totally. Yeah, it's playing out very, very clearly here in Indiana. And what's ironic is you have places like Arizona or places that don't have water.
Yeah.
But land is incredibly cheap. So that's a bigger water problem. I think we could argue this could be controversial for folks in Indiana, but we're around the Great Lakes, like we're water rich, but we still have to understand the long-term implications and
it's all cyclical. Our water cycle is cyclical. So we may be water rich now, but we had a major drought back in 2012.
Yeah.
And, when you think about Indiana as agriculture being a major driver of our economy, and industry, so, it's all cyclical. So understanding what our water management plan is from decades from now to support our economic drivers is the piece.
And humans are really good at thinking long term, aren't we?
We think in terms.
Yes, that's a big part of. I think a lot about the global race and some of this stuff too, and I think that's maybe a Western culture challenge, right? Where our election cycles are every 2 years, and we're very focused on what's in front of us instead of playing the long game, and so it's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna pivot for a second. I'm absolutely gonna come back to the economics and the government and what Indiana can be doing and AI. But I have a lot of listeners that are entrepreneurs and startup folks. Yeah. So we talked about why jump into the water business, right? Now this question. So you built a technology company that sells to governments. Yeah. I literally couldn't think of a worse customer for a technology company. Yeah. So they're the slowest, they're the most regulated, like clunky, right? What did you learn about innovation when trying to sell into a slow-moving industry like city government or state government?
Yeah. Yeah, and I learned, before starting 120Water, I had mentors that said, never go join a company that sells to education or governments. And actually, what did I do? I started a company where those are our two ICPs,
Perfect. Right? Let's do both at once.
And I think this is where, quite frankly, the attitude of being an entrepreneur superseded those that sound advice, right? Yeah, if I would have listened to the mentors, I would have said, absolutely not. This is too hard. This just seems insurmountable. But this solution needed to exist in the market. Yeah,
someone has to do this.
Someone has to do this.
And you are that person.
And I don't know, this is going to sound really weird, but it was almost like I knew exactly what the solution needed to look like. And so then therefore I felt very comfortable failing.
And that's the true entrepreneurial
Right.
perspective.
Right. And it's like, I'm going to go. And I mean, the first 6 months, I probably talked to hundreds of people in the industry. And I would end every single conversation with, tell me why this isn't worth doing. And they're like, well, I may not buy your product immediately, but this is worth doing.
Yeah.
And it was that motivation. I wasn't getting paid to do it. I mean, I was filling bottles from my dining room table.
Sure.
I was convincing Isaac, hey, eventually maybe I'll give you some options, but will you do this on the side? So I just, this is where I think passion superseded maybe some business intelligence, starting the company and just saying, I know how I can solve the problem. And then eventually when we started to mature as a business and I needed to go raise capital, that's when the business plan and I got really good about selling into the market. And I'll be honest, I love the government and municipal market now. I really do.
Well, it's that uphill climb, and once you get to the top of the mountain, it feels like you can actually make a huge difference.
Yeah, and the motions. Sometimes just sitting down and saying, I understand your procurement cycles are broken. Salesforce doesn't have the patience to solve that, but I'm willing to sit down as an entrepreneur and a creative thinker. How could we procure this? So it betters the state and it betters the company.
It's great.
And I've just found that honestly, if you can just sit down and have conversations, you can really accomplish some
That's great.
Interesting things,
Yeah. Yeah. I think what we've definitely learned is that this industry, and I don't think it's different from any industry. I think this goes all the way back to Zig Ziglar that Chris Baggett loves.
Yeah. I love Zig.
Similar situations sell, but this industry puts a high premium on emotional intelligence, and they're not always looking for the smartest problem. There's lots of smart people in this industry that are going to come in. But I remember talking to a utility leader early on, and he was like, I'm tired of people coming in and selling me their next smart technology. My people are smart. You're digital, and that's the difference. And so I think being able to understand that you're there to say, I'm not here to tell you you're doing it wrong. I'm here to say, I would love to help you get more out of what you're doing.
What resources
because
you have now.
There might be a better way to solve this
Well, let's
problem.
double click on that. So people think of water, they think of concrete and pipes, right? Y'all are a data company.
That's right.
Connected to all of that. So it's records, it's testing results, it's compliance. How is big data fit into the water utilities business?
That's why we exist. I mean, it's why we exist. So as an industry, and I know we're going to get into the AI leap here in a minute, the water industry is still very much analog.
Which makes sense.
Which makes complete sense, right? But the irony is they're creating a lot of digital data. They just don't know how to store and normalize it to their advantage.
Okay.
So, one of our value props is we were one of the first companies, I would say maybe the first company in our digital water space to come in and say, you have disparate data silos across your organization. You're storing customer service data here, you're storing laboratory service data here, you're storing infrastructure data here, but they're all correlated around a single location or a single lat long, or there is us living in tech and data have been doing this for eons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the first part is understanding the assets, the digital assets that you're sitting on. How can you then bring them into a database where then now we can actually run workflow programs on, leverage.
Start to optimize a little bit.
Optimize it, right? So, it seems really silly talking about this right now on a podcast, that's focused towards entrepreneurs. Because I'm not saying anything that hasn't existed for decades, but in the water, that's kind of where we are as an industry.
Well, it's interesting to say that because as you're talking, I'm thinking about that entrepreneurial need, right? They don't think like entrepreneurs.
They do not.
They're operators, and they've been doing it the same way for 100 years. And so bringing a new way to think about stuff to the world can change things.
And, truthfully, you want someone in that role to not jump at trying a bunch of new things when it comes to water quality.
Makes total sense.
Where we can kind of, as entrepreneurs, be like, oh, it's so frustrating. They're risk averse. They don't want to try new things. It's like, actually, when I don't want them just like being like, let me see what happens if I add a little bit more of this. Let's just test that. We'll just split test it. Your home and your home. We'll see who dies first.
See who dies first.
See who dies first.
That's not a strategy anybody wants to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, let's so this is an AI podcast. Let's talk about AI,
go.
right? And this is the world I live in every day. And so it was funny. I interviewed the chief AI officer for Eli Lilly a couple weeks ago, and he said something that I still laugh about. He said, AI is a lot like soccer right now. Everyone's talking about it and nobody's actually playing.
Oh, interesting.
And it made me laugh because it's like, it's a buzzword, right? It's in everything. But infrastructure industries like water, they weren't even looking at data, let alone AI-ifying this stuff. Where are you seeing AI make a difference today? I mean, are municipalities starting to lean in? Is it through your software? Are there others? Like, what's happening in the world of AI and water right now?
Well, I'm going to maybe take us back a little bit, but I promise we'll get to what I would say commercial application of AI. But in our industry, it's about literally the physical infrastructure of AI. And what's interesting about that is obviously it's a very water and energy intensive topic to be able to bring these data centers into these communities. But what's interesting, what's happening in our water industry is the innovation economy that's actually being created to support this data center industry so that we can build commercial applications on top of it, right? So what I'm seeing, which I know we nerd out a lot when we think about the possible, is the convergence of actually hardware and software and what that's doing to help kind of shrink the footprint of these data centers, optimize the efficiency of these data centers, from cool stuff like producing water out of the condensation of the cooling agents within the center. How cool is that technology?
That's great.
Right? And that combines both hardware, software, and AI, right? So those are really interesting things that we are exploring as a community and figuring out what kind of innovation economy is going to be created. On the commercial side, we're seeing a lot of applications targeted towards the massive problem of workforce and brain drain.
Okay.
So I think, Isaac, you tell the stat really well that 50% of our operators are eligible for retirement within the next 5 years. That is a lot of institutional knowledge and legacy knowledge that's going to be walking out the door with a pipeline of talent that is insufficient to be able to pick up. And we live in the influencer YouTube star generation. There's probably similarly not a lot of people like going to school to want to be a water person. They're not. And even if you go to school, water DNA is very regional. You know, the thumbprint of what your water composition in your city of Noblesville is going to look slightly different than if you're in Marion County or Rensselaer, Indiana, where I grew up. And so even if you kind of go to school to learn how to be an operator and what to do, there's still a lot of subjectivity and artisticness, you know, that really plays into being a really good operator. So what we're seeing, some of the most exciting things we're seeing is how can we build, agentic models on top of that institutional knowledge of the operator.
That's great. That's the way most businesses should be thinking about AI right now.
Right. And you know, trying to solve in a very antiquated, innovation averse industry, like how do we solve some of the
it's knowledge transfer in a lot of ways, right?
It's like lower hanging fruit, like lower to buy-in type problems, because we're not going to have AI operating our water treatment plants in our lifetime. Let's just put it that way. Those aren't the problems we're solving with AI.
Okay.
But how do we pick off maybe some very operational type problems that we can get buy-in in the market?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of industries struggle with that, right? That institutional knowledge of this guy's done it for 40 years and knows everything there is to know, and he's going to retire someday. And now what? And AI can help solve that in a big way.
Yeah.
Just using agentic, get everything out of that person's brain and make it available to the rest of the team is a great step.
What are you saying?
Yeah, I would say, like, I was at a conference that the American Waterworks Association did a AI and data roundtable maybe 3 weeks ago. And one of the cool convergences of technology, I think, was around augmented reality and AI. And it's kind of in the workforce space too, but they're saying at least for newer treatment plants that are more sophisticated, where all the manuals can exist, those can be in language models. So when someone is going in, they can put on meta glasses or something like that, be tied into someone from support that can literally be feeding them information of like, push this button, you don't want to do this, I can see this. So it's more of how do you empower the workforce that, 60% of the water workforce is in the field. And so they need tools, not necessarily how do I better prompt to dig a pipe, like that they're not going to prompt better.
Sure.
But they do need updated technology that works in the field with them and is taking advantage of the depth of knowledge in technical manuals and a support staff that's saying, hey, I can support 10 operators who don't all need to know everything about this piece of equipment.
Well, what I love about that too is if you're a small municipality, what I heard you say earlier was there's 3 employees serving 10,000 people, and those are mowing the grass and, trimming the bushes.
Yeah.
And now they're in charge of water. So being able to take that institutional knowledge,
it's going to be a game changer.
It's wild.
It's going to be a game changer.
That's a really neat thing.
Yeah.
It is
the
neat.
barrier to that is just that those infrastructure needs to be updated because they don't necessarily have the manuals for the thing that was put in place.
Yeah. And I think the barrier, which is interesting, that Lily of all folks made that comment, which I don't know to be a little bit worried or not, because I would hope that they're a little further along and playing the game. But
they're definitely playing the game.
They're definitely playing the game.
They're running the league.
Yeah, they're running the league, exactly.
They know what's up.
It might be a preschool soccer league right now. We're all kind of kicking around the same ball, but
I do think the more we can do from a state governance and policy standpoint, because these municipalities are going to be the last to adopt anything.
Oh man. Well, let me I'll caveat this first.
Yes.
Like, I have no intention ever in getting into politics on this stuff. So this isn't political bias. This is just witnessing this from an outsider.
Yes.
Okay. We have data centers that want to plant in anywhere they can go, right? Right now. They need water, they need power, they need space, they need zoning, they need all these things. I am watching, just again, outsider watching the world. I'm watching 3-person city or county councils elected by maybe 3,500 votes total to get the position, blocking $5 billion deals coming into their community. I asked this question, like, I asked Congresswoman Houchin, I talked to her about this, and she represents a lot of rural Indiana. Yeah. And I said, as we think about this AI space race, as I call it, where we're trying to outpace the Russians and the Chinese, we got to have data centers. We got to have the infrastructure to support those data centers. What's going to happen here? How is this? I mean, is this I mean, maybe you, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
We're living in the space. And it starts with a state that wants to be a leader versus just allowing the tech companies to go directly to these towns and do whatever the heck they're going to do. I mean, what we're seeing is the states that are actually leading are ones where you have state-focused initiatives that are combining all of the stakeholders that need to be at the table in order to do this.
And that includes water.
Viable. It includes water. It includes workforce development, obviously economic development. Policy has to be there because, part of what we're seeing as working well is we need to hold these tech companies accountable via permits or some other mechanism for the water usage they say they're going to actually need. And if they need more, well, they're going to have to pay for more. And that's going to come at a higher rate, not a lower rate. But communities, no offense to very capable,
for sure,
community leaders, probably shouldn't be the ones
negotiating $5 billion deals.
Exactly. Right. So
because there is a statewide connectivity. Like at the end of the day, we know roughly how much power the state of Indiana needs to produce and how much water the state of Indiana needs to produce.
And then the state of Indiana has been so smart. We also know regionally where to best place these because we've done regional water studies. The state's already broken out regionally when we think about water as the geology of water and where it's coming from and where we have. Now, there's more that we're working on, but in my opinion, it does start with what is the state's strategy on data centers? Do we have the right people around the table to make that?
I'm going to ask a real dumb question.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
I don't know.
That's not dumb.
What is this? Does the state have a vision on this? Is there like a plan?
I think we're getting there.
Okay.
Whether we're too late or not is the question. But I do have optimism that we are getting there based on some of the conversations.
That's good.
Yeah.
I heard you say earlier that like we have a pretty good water situation relative to the Arizonas of the world.
We do.
Yeah, and we have good neighbors in states like in Minnesota. There's there's an organization called Freshwater, and Michelle Stockness has a really good framework on how states can think about this. So there's a lot of thought being put in across the industry about what to do from an infrastructure standpoint. I think you said earlier that you don't want to get political. Sure. I think one of the things I love about water is that it forces conversations that do become political in terms of hey, let's all agree that we value this and we want to figure out how we
like
organize.
we can align on.
And I actually like as much controversy in my Facebook neighborhood groups is like, blows up any mention of a data center and those kind of things. I think what is good about it is we're realizing that even from a power standpoint, water is heavy. Jet cooling technology takes a lot of energy, which is a lot of electricity. And so these things are tied. And so I think we're starting to finally realize that, we have to be thoughtful about this. And unfortunately, the technology is moving so fast. It's hard for our human brains. Like, I feel like we're just kind of in this weird paradigm shift moment as a society of like, whoa, it's moving fast. And we have to be really thoughtful. These are diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Like, that's very real.
Yeah.
Well, and frankly, that's why I'm excited to see entrepreneurs engaged in the conversation.
Yes.
Because we have to be willing to make hard decisions quickly and influencing some of these things because it's moving faster than we're ready for it.
Yes,
I mean, I've interviewed lawyers, I've interviewed all sorts of folks, and they're like, good luck. Yeah. Legislation's not going to keep up with AI. It's not happening.
It's not, and developers aren't going to miss shooting their shot for a quick windfall that has no recurring value after they immediately place that data center. So we have to understand who's negotiating and for what benefit. And if we don't start to control the strategy and the conversation, again, I think it's a once in a generational opportunity for the state to really get ahead of the situation.
All right, I'm going to throw a grenade in the middle of the room.
I was just thinking about throwing one too.
Okay, well, maybe it's the same grenade. We'll see. I am watching from I get the luxury of watching from the outside, right?
Yeah.
And I live in big tech. I watch this stuff.
Okay.
To me, it feels like every time Google or Amazon or Facebook comes in and tries to put in a data center, they do it behind this like NDA thing, right? Where they don't want anybody to know they're coming in. And then surprise, we're launching a data center and you start seeing signs everywhere. It's like, to me, it feels like what I heard you say, maybe I'm misreading this, was, hey, state, hey, water, hey, economic development, hey, workforce development, hey, Facebook, let's all get together and do this publicly and transparently because it is going to happen, right? One of the things I'm kind of waiting for from the Trump administration or from the governor's office is like voluntolding the local communities. This is coming, deal with it, right? Because we have to have it for our state or for our country. Yeah. And that worries me. I mean, if I were a local official, I would be trying to figure out how to say yes in a way that preserves my goals of my community.
That's right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's exactly right. Without saying anything that would get me in trouble here.
Please.
We're not telling a balanced story. In my opinion, the entire narrative is not balanced. It's one-sided exactly to the favor of these big tech companies that know how to steamroll their agenda in these small communities. And Isaac and I don't want to speak for you, but I do think we're aligned on this issue where there is a very good way where if you told the balanced side of the story of not only why does Amazon or Facebook need to be here, but here's also the benefit to putting them here that your community is going to get because of that, I actually think then we could start from a place of positivity and launching point much more constructive.
I read a story about local schools getting $2.5 million a year.
Why don't we have all of these people pay for our aging infrastructure?
Yes.
I mean, why? We know that the state of Indiana is going to need how many billions of dollars to replace. Why don't we have Facebook and Amazon foot that bill? Those are not unheard of negotiation points in other communities that are achieving.
I worry that we're losing leverage in negotiating the need for updated infrastructure with hey, if you're coming into our community, let's actually do that. And the NDAs hurt. And I think they're starting to learn that it's going to hurt whatever company is putting it in because I'm sure they do it for competitive reasons and you don't want to communicate too soon and there's a communication strategy, but you're going to be taking resources from a community. They deserve to know who those everything.
And what are we getting for you taking those resources?
Because they should be getting more than they're giving. And that's just the point blank. Because there are ways to get more than they're
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you think about it, nobody wants a landfill near their house. Nobody wants this stuff, right? And I don't want, but it has to go somewhere,
Has to go
right?
somewhere, yep.
And there's a market economic component to all of this. And at the end of the day, like, I would sacrifice a lot if my children and their future generations had a better life, right? I mean, like, that's just part of thinking bigger about all of this.
As the public, I think we also need to recognize that it is very natural for us to resist things that we don't understand yet.
Great point.
And I think what's in people's mind right now, and if you watched the Super Bowl, there was the Amazon Ring commercial with Flock. Do you know what that reminded me of locally?
That's right.
Remember Geophedia 2011?
Okay.
They started.
Okay.
In 2016, they got sued by the ACLU. That's why they shut down, because the Chicago Police Department was using it for surveillance.
Wow.
But they actually weren't told to shut down. It was because Facebook, Instagram, they pulled the connection of the data to that technology. So that technology was built on something that they didn't know necessarily. And
I didn't know that.
And it collapsed.
Yeah.
But 10 years later, we're still like, what's in people's mind is like, hey, we're not sure. And you brought this up on your last episode with surveillance. There's a conversation of, we like AI. We know it needs infrastructure. We know it's good for water. Like, it's good for water innovation, and we need to get better, and like all these things. But there's also this but have we as a society decided how we want to use it and how we don't want to use it? And so there's this ethical dilemma that I think until there's confidence that like, it's going to be hard to get communities to say, oh yeah, sure. Even if you're throwing a couple extra jobs, I'm actually
there's the ethical
there's the
dilemma.
unknown that I don't know what's on the other side of that.
That's a great point.
So we've talked about AI in regards to the industry itself and how it's being used. We've talked about it in terms of, powering the data centers, which is the biggest conversation right now, probably in all things AI. If we zoom out 10, 20 years from now, and it's funny because when I talk about AI stuff, I'm like, you can't have a 2-year plan anymore because it's moving so fast, let alone a 10-year plan.
Right.
But just put this like helmet on or whatever and think about the future. What does an AI-enabled city look like? Is that a thing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I have my 5.
Dream big. I want to hear it.
Okay. The physical infrastructure of data centers have become much more condensed because the technology has allowed it to become much more condensed, which then decreases the cost to actually supply clean water. So the municipal market and ratepayers benefit from the innovation that has been developed to shrink the physical size of the data centers. I wouldn't be surprised if we see data centers in space.
Yeah,
underwater.
I've heard Elon talk about that.
I mean,
it makes sense, really. I mean,
maybe they are also on-prem. 20 years from now, I don't think it's crazy to think that we actually go back to an on-prem world where we have compute power directly tied
based
to
on the laws of physics.
Exactly.
It seems like it's going to happen.
Yeah, even on the commercial, especially on the commercial and industrial footprint. But the barrier right there is back to what I just mentioned previously, is shrinking the technology footprint enough to physically make that possible. But I have confidence.
Well, I believe that. I mean, I was just at Lilly last week, and they have the Lily Pod, they call it. I want to say Lily Pad, but that's not. It's the Lily Pod. It's
missed opportunity.
I know, right? But it's it's $1 billion computer. Yeah. I mean, you have to be $1 trillion company to be able to have that kind of an investment. That. It was pretty cool. It was the size of a football field.
That's so cool.
But it was on-prem, right? And so it's already leaning in that direction as it gets smaller and faster and cheaper. That makes total sense to me.
Yes. And I think the municipal economy benefits from all of that technology that's then obviously being used in
But how does that roll out to the brown counties of the world, like the small communities that don't have that level of infrastructure? And
it democratizes it. It allows them for that accessibility to actually go and procure that. Again, whether you're talking reuse or something, it's just that it actually, I don't want to say commoditizes, but in a way it does. It commoditizes the technology they now have access to run their plants more efficiently. And I, talk about the commercial use of AI. AI is going to be built into every single thing that's being used.
I think it already is starting to be.
It's spell. I mean, I hate to say it's spell check. It's just a
core feature.
Core feature, right?
Core part of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's places like South Korea or Singapore from a water standpoint that are so much further ahead in terms of, you're doing everything from treatment, water use it's analyzing, even in the bathrooms, analyzing what comes out of your body and then giving you data and all of that. I think the barriers are mostly regulatory.
Yeah.
All of those communities have like one central entity that manages all water communities. We have 55,000 water utilities, not just one.
And it's competitive. I mean, that's the challenge and the benefit of capitalism, right?
Exactly.
I mean, there's some of these states are going to race to the bottom and give the data centers everything that they can have to locate here, and some are going to hold their ground and do the right thing. And I mean, it is an ongoing larger conversation.
Yeah, and there's somewhere in the middle. We're gonna find somewhere in the middle.
Well, I do have a wild card question I want to ask you at the end, but I always ask my guests, what keeps you up at night about this stuff? And I'm gonna click on this specifically because we talked about some of these maybe smaller communities that don't have the infrastructure, the resources, the humans, right? The dollars, all the parts that can go with it. The thing that really concerns me is with the age of AI, I'm seeing a wider chasm between the haves and the have-nots, right? And it happens at the school level. It happens at the people leaning in versus watching from the sidelines. First, I guess it sounds like we're aligned on that concern for communities. But as it relates to what you're witnessing right now in the water space, maybe in the Indiana space, maybe in the AI space, what's keeping you guys up at night right now? What would you say is our challenge we need to solve?
Can AI solve funding challenges?
For bringing, like, to get this stuff done, like to bring in the cash to build these things? You said something that I don't know, and I get I'm naive here and I don't understand how the world works and some of this stuff, but if a data center is going to make a $5 billion investment, it feels like they should be able to pay for the water and the power.
Right.
Like, it's crazy to me to think that the people living in that town, their power bills and their water bills will go up. Like, I flip that conversation and say, look, we want to locate here and we're going to make your bills go down. And then people will be all for it.
Yeah. That's not,
right?
I can't even comprehend that because that's so backwards. And that's just because they're trying to put those conversations into existing structures that are outdated. So you have to flip this. You've got to reimagine the process, the structure, the rate structure in this new economy. But,
well, I think part of that's that capitalism piece, though, right? It's like other communities will bring you in and won't make you do that.
That's right.
So if I'm Meta or Amazon and I'm trying to locate data centers, mathematically, I'm going to go wherever it's the cheapest for me to do it, right, to accomplish my goals. So I get that. But there has to be that overarching bigger strategy about how all this fits together.
That's right. Yeah.
Because I know right now, like I talk to folks in the power space and they say, the data centers, there's standing orders.
Yeah.
Right? If they could find a place to put it, they would buy 20 of them because the desire for where we're going is so big right now.
Yeah.
I just have to believe there's some conversation there economically.
I agree. But I want to double click on the haves and have-nots. We talk a lot about that in water.
Okay.
Because that is as clear as day. The haves are already, optimized. They really don't have a lot of the workforce issues because they can solve their own problems. That's maybe 2% of our water market nationwide. And so I do agree with you in that. I think we're already behind. And this is now just a stepwise, we need to catch up one step. I do worry that if we don't have innovation levers to help bring the smaller, more rural communities into this conversation that quite frankly don't exist right now, their path to ever adopting any sort of AI tool or leveraging it for good is
when you play that, you see that with the brain drain concept, right?
Yeah.
Just on if you grew up in small town Indiana,
it only gets wider.
You're moving out,
I
right?
know.
You're getting educated, you're moving out, and you're going to where economic opportunities exist. One thing I've always thought about is as the world gets smaller with the internet and the fact that you can work from home in a lot of places and high-speed internet and all that, there's a real value in Indiana. The standard of living. I did an interview maybe 10 or 12 episodes ago with a couple that moved here from Silicon Valley, and they're living their best life.
Yeah.
Because they're getting paid Silicon Valley wages and living in Fishers.
I know.
And it's like,
no better place to start a company.
what a cool thing.
I know. Yeah. And now I'm going to do that. I'll end my statement on the optimism approach, or optimists approach. I mean, think about AI not disrupting an industry, replacing water pipes, fixing your infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity to kind of embrace the economies that aren't going to go away because of AI, but how can we help them more leverage it in a better way? But again, that's my soapbox. What do you think, Isaac?
Yeah, I think what keeps me up at night is it's everything around security. I think a lot of the challenges are just
yeah, that's a good one.
The challenges, and you were talking about it earlier. I think we're moving from this world where we saw the value of everything being connected and every data source being connected. And it's important and it helps us get some efficiencies. But we're also seeing even selling into utilities that there's higher scrutiny of saying, we want to know the guardrails of if you throw an agent at something, an AI agent, and it can access everything. You mentioned this on your pod, like you actually want gates. On it. You don't want it access to your bank account. You don't want it. You don't want it just like, it accidentally bought, 300
you don't want it
Starbucks
dosing your
for me. That wasn't what I just said, order a coffee.
Yeah.
And,
an order for the whole town.
I think we're just realizing like, hey, how do we build good containers and boundaries? Which is a weird conversation. I feel like we're needing to have like therapist level conversations with AI agents on, hey, what are good boundaries for you? How do you feel about that?
And that's a
which is weird.
Man, and those are the challenges that we're going to fight as people investing in this space, right? The folks that are having the conversations. The whole point of this podcast is to engage in human conversations about these issues. There's no answers. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm sorry if you listen and I don't teach you anything, but hopefully I made you think about something. That's right? That's really the goal.
That's what we need. We need good conversations. I feel like we try to talk at each other with
here's my strategy.
Well,
water is one of those things. I'm so glad you guys came on this podcast because I know nothing about water other than I drink it and I cook with it and I use it, right? But I don't know how it all works. Yeah. And I'm thrilled that there are smart people out there leaning into this to try to make
at least curious people. I don't know about smart.
Well, let me ask this wildcard question. We'll end with this, okay? Flint crisis, you mentioned at the very outset. If that happened today, or could it happen today, maybe with the technology we now have, the data systems, the AI, how is it different? Has anything changed since that moment in time in the water industry?
Yeah, man.
Won't change until we get the pipes out.
It won't change it. Well, no, but
because the pipes are the lead or whatever it is.
But it's such a fascinating question because it was over 10 years ago. And so I guess how I'd answer that question is no, the Flint, Michigan water crisis still would have existed. However, I've seen technology, and it's actually AI technology, I'm sure you have too, Isaac, which actually could have mitigated the problem if that utility would have been using it. But then this goes back to the have and have nots.
That's right.
Flint, Michigan is a very, very poor community.
Sure.
There's no way they would have actually been able to make that investment in the technology that would have showed them all of the different scenarios in a dynamic fashion, not in like, I'm going to engage an engineering firm to spend hundreds of $millions on this issue. I'm going to invest in technology that's going to give me virtual jar testing data at my fingertips. So yes, I've seen the technology and I've seen it in action that probably could have helped inform better decision-making, which is actually what led to Flint, not the pipes. It was the decision-making to change source water and do it and expedite the process for a cost-cutting measure. And then that allowed all of the leaching of the particulates, which were under control previously under the last water chemistry. So it was a man-made problem, which doesn't have to exist. Unfortunately, I think until we kind of can allow and allow these tools in a safe manner to be affordable in front of these municipalities, I'm not sure that much is going to change.
And I think that is actually what's super exciting about what we've done in having a platform that both water regulators or state agencies have access to and utilities is it's bridging a lot of data. And I think it's not too far in the distant future that we're able to have some predictions about, hey, what happens if we have a ton of rainfall, we need to optimize treatment, what prevents. I think there is a level of getting better productivity, but more productivity, is that a word?
Close
Getting
enough.
better at predicting things or how to address it before it happens, but more importantly, making sure that it's communicated up to regulators and out to communities. And I think regardless of what we're doing, it's I mean, maybe this is just the marketer side. It's communicating up and communicating out. If you're not doing that well, it doesn't matter if you've got the best solution. People are going to feel, what were you hiding? Like we're just humans trying to understand this problem.
Yeah.
Well, I genuinely didn't know that I'd have this much fun talking about water. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Final piece, how do folks find out more about you, follow along? I know you have a podcast. If I wanted to learn more about everything you're up to and follow your work, how does one do that?
I mean, if you want to, listen, make water work. I mean, we have these conversations weekly. We go deep. We nerd out on water. So, Make Water Work podcast.
Yeah, Make Water Work podcast. Find us on LinkedIn. And since this is in Indiana, the state of Indiana is a customer. A lot of utilities are customers. If you're wondering about your water quality specifically, your water utility, my water utility, Citizens, has a customer request program where I can get my water sampled.
Very cool.
And 120Water does a fulfillment.
How cool.
So
full circle.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Full circle.
So you can follow along and experience the origin of the product and get your water sampled.
And see it from the provider.
There you go.
Very cool. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. I really sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks again to Megan Glover and Isaac Pellerin for coming on the show today to talk about water. 120Water is doing some really cool stuff. And the thing that hit me the most as I listen back to this episode is I am so grateful that we have really smart, entrepreneurially minded people that have made a deliberate decision to get into this space. These are folks that are thinking about the future and not just trying to manage 150-year-old infrastructure. These are people that are trying to change the world for the better. And I made a kind of a joke in the very front end of the conversation with Megan, and I said, who wakes up in the middle of the night and decides water infrastructure? That's what I want to dedicate my life to, dedicate my resources and time to. And I'm just grateful that they did. Like, what a cool thing that people like this are out there fighting these charges. And I know that Megan's connected in the Indiana space. I know she's doing a lot of really big things at the state level and really throughout the region. And again, I'm thrilled as we now, in the age of AI that nobody would have predicted 20 years ago, are having potential water issues moving forward as our infrastructure is crumbling. And as we want safe, clean water for us and our future generations, I mean, we need people like this in the room where it happened, as they say in Hamilton. So again, grateful to Megan and Isaac for coming on the show, for fighting this fight, and for keeping us all informed on what's happening. I do encourage you to go subscribe to their newsletter, go listen to their podcast. There's a lot here, and I think it's something that we need to stay in tune with as the world continues to evolve around us. And so just thrilled for that. Next week, we'll be back with another episode. Still working to lock down the final guest. I got a handful of cool guests coming on in the coming weeks. But I don't know exactly what lands when in terms of a timing standpoint. But we're going to be having some conversations with Secretary of Education, Dr. Katie Jenner, about what's happening in Indiana's K-12 landscape. We're going to be having some other conversations with members of the ITIA group that I've talked about in past episodes about legislation that's gone through the Indiana State House this year and how AI, infrastructure, education, all these things fit into that. And then we're going to start to get into some fun conversations that are maybe a little more less tactical, less technical, but a little bit more interesting in the human side of some of this stuff. And so stay tuned for future episodes. And who knows, maybe someday soon, you'll be able to watch this episode on Netflix. Cheers.